Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of Soccer for Us. I am Bart, and on this episode we are talking about the first ever roster for the U.S. men's national team assembled by Mauricio Pochettino, the new head coach of the program. To talk about that with me is a man who has been fighting the good fight on the girls' youth soccer field recently in myriad different ways. It is your friend of mine, Thomas, aka US Keeper. Thomas, glad you got some free time in between coaching and writing and all the things you have found yourself involved in now.
Yeah, we got some rain come through today, so it was I got a little reprieve from practices, so that was helpful for sure.
Very nice. Well, glad to have you to talk about the first ever roster from Mauricio Pochettino for the U.S. men's national team. That in itself is a momentous thing to celebrate, but I think you and I both agree that this is a good roster, all things considered. And most of those things we have to consider are the fact that there are multiple injuries that kept probably our best players from participating in this window in these matches against Panama and Mexico.
Yeah, injuries are part of the game for sure. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to see what most of us would like to think is the top 25 players. I think that to me it is concerning. Well, not concerning. I think you want to see these players come into every camp being healthy. We want to have a healthy group of players, whatever the core group is, whatever the secondary group is, you know, between now and through the World Cup, be part of these camps so that we can build that continuity under Pochettino, because he is going to have some different philosophies that these players are going to need to hear, share, and learn to better suit this team and position them for success, at the World Cup coming up.
Well, let's first off, before we get into the actual roster, talk about those injuries, right? Flo Balogun, Gio Reyna, Tim Weah. Those are the major three. But then behind that, Johnny Cardoso, Chris Richards, Tyler Adams, Serginho Dest, Cameron Carter-Vickers, Kevin Paredes, Diego Koken, Caleb Wiley, Luca De La Torre, Richie Ledesma, Griffin Yao, Cade Cowell, Taylor Booth, and that's not even, guys farther down the depth chart. A lot of injuries, and that certainly is affecting the players that were called in, but I think, does give a good glimpse into what the current depth chart might be right now.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, as much as I don't want to see injuries, it is interesting when any coach has to replace players that were called in initially that got injured, in the final weekend before camp, and to see that the players that were called in, kind of a 1-for-1 with the switches.
Right.
Cardoso injured, Tessman comes in, Way injured, Zendejas comes in, and then Balogun gets injured, and we see Brandon Vasquez come in. So it is a good 1-for-1 swap of those players and coming into camp. So it's a good opportunity. I think for some of those players, this could be, their only chance if they can't show Pochettino, what they have. So I think it's going to be a motivator for these players that weren't originally called into the camp now that, are going to go out there and, show Pochettino what they can do and, make it hard for him, hopefully, to not call him into, camps going forward.
Well, that's, I think, the biggest thing to look at for this camp, right, is everyone is on a clean slate. No one has any rapport really built up with the head coach. For better or worse, mostly for worse in the second cycle, players kind of had that built up with Greg Berhalter. You and I have talked about how much he relied on trust of guys and how much he relied on trust in guys when it came time to make some decisions, and at times sacrificed, actual quality. Now, all managers do that. So Pochettino is going to find guys that he trusts, and what coaches, how they determine that trust metric is different for each coach. And, all 25 players who got called into this camp have an opportunity not only to put themselves in consideration for the top 23, but as we talked about, who are the next guys called up, right? So right now it could be Zendejas, just as an example, but he has to now show and prove that he has earned that trust from Pochettino. Other than that, though, I have to say, I'm underwhelmed by the roster, but not in a bad way. Does that make sense? Because to me, this is the group of players I expected to be called in because the player pool is what the player pool is. I think a lot of people thought that all of a sudden Mauricio Pochettino would get called in. We'd have like 23 brand new players come in, and suddenly we're like a top 5 team. Uh, that's not what's happened here, and that's not what was going to happen. So I'm underwhelmed, but like not in a bad way.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I mean, I think you wanted that like holy crap selection, right? That no one was seeing, no one was looking at, and I think we'll see that as we move through, head into next summer's Gold Cup. I think there will be players I think that will get these
Mm.
considerations because I think you look back to Klinsmann, right or wrong, support or not support, he brought in certain types of players. Alan Gordon, I think it was, as a
Yeah.
poacher that he thought was great, and extra, end of the match when you need a goal for a win or a tie. Type of player. Obviously, he was big on speed players like Yedlin and Julian Green. So Pochettino will have his type of player that I'm
Hmm.
sure that will come out of the youth for sure. Hopefully for the youth side, and not some dried up old veteran that we no longer want to see. But it's possible he may see something in a player and say, "Look, this is your role." And I think that is the part of what a manager needs to be doing. It's saying, "This is your role. This is what we expect of you. You're going to be a starter if you're healthy. If you're not, this is what your role is going to be coming off the bench." That sort of thing. And there were some comments about Aronson and trying to figure out what his role is going to be. Is he better on the wing? Is he better up the middle? I love that, right? Because he's thinking, he's watching it. He's definitely engaged in that. And I think he's looking to get every ounce of talent and put these players in positions to succeed and help the team succeed. Like that, to me, he's already talking and doing that, and we haven't even played a match yet.
Right. And that's, again, I think something that it's not necessarily about new players all the time. It's about new perspectives on players and new ideas to use players. And that's where I am interested for some of these guys where they end up actually playing. So let's dig into the roster um, and just go position by position. Let's start at the back with the goalkeepers. Like last camp, 4 goalkeepers brought in. I think, and I think you might agree that I love this idea. Bringing in a 4th goalkeeper, that you're only going to need 3 for a match day, 2 for a match day, really, if we're being honest. But why not have 4 goalkeepers to, especially right now, expand the amount of people you're looking at? And who cares if the goalkeeper is an extra training body because now you can run 2 full teams or got 4 goals now. So I love the 4 goalkeepers idea. I don't know. That's just me.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, there's a lot of drills that you can do with 4 keepers. I think it just gives you an extra look at that in terms of what it is. And I think when you look at the goalkeeper, I mean, it's a wide open position, right? At this point, um, if one of these players steps up or just completely fails, then you bring the next one in, right? You don't have a huge depth in this position, but you definitely have options. Bring a couple of these veterans in, sprinkled in with some of these younger keepers, and let's see what
Yeah.
what works with this group, and then he's got to decide. I think sooner, heading into the Gold Cup, who his top 2 are going to be in that 3rd spot. In my opinion, is going to probably be wide open a little bit for whatever um, whatever he thinks is going to be best for the team or experience for a player. Going forward.
Well, those 4 goalkeepers are Ethan Horvath from Cardiff City, Patrick Schulte from Columbus Crew, Zach Steffen from Colorado Rapids, and Matt Turner from Crystal Palace. Now, I still think it's Turner's spot, right? I still think he is the number 1, but hey, if you're asking me, it's Schulte time, baby. Why not?
Yeah, I mean, I am a big fan of Turner and what his shot caping abilities, shot stopping abilities are. That being said, he's not playing, and that's you can only do that for so long as a goalkeeper and not be sharp.
Yes.
Schulte's playing; he's playing at a high level. Um, he's not perfect. He had moments in the last game he played in that were great. The moments that were shaky. So I mean, give him a look. I mean, Pochettino, I don't know how he's going to decide how he's going to play these players and what looks he's hoping to have for them, but he seems to be, invested in the players and finding spots on this team and maybe transfers, to
Hmm.
help them, you know, uh, find ways to get all these players, including the goalkeepers, playing regular minutes.
Well, you mentioned obviously Turner not playing regular minutes at Crystal Palace, a Premier League club. Ethan Horvath seems to have been benched at Cardiff City, which is not a Premier League club. So we call in Zach Steffen, a guy who was, for all intents and purposes, benched by Greg Berhalter. Now we don't know the exact conversation, but he was a mainstay throughout qualifying. Turner, in my opinion, took over the number one role during qualifying because Steffen proved time and time again he was unreliable, but not as unreliable, in my opinion, to not be a third choice or a second choice goalkeeper, but didn't even go to the 2022 World Cup. First roster under Pochettino, and Steffen is now back. That is probably the most significant difference I can see on this roster. I will say it's a little bit of a surprise because I don't think Zach Steffen has proven to be a great goalkeeper somehow again playing for Colorado. Now, his team did a decent job in Leagues Cup. They didn't make the final though. So I don't know exactly what they're seeing. But I'm wondering also if that's just kind of a testament to the state of the USMNT goalkeeper pool right now.
Yeah, I mean, Steffen, there had been speculation during the qualifying. He had sustained, I want to say a knee injury, but I think it was probably a knee injury that was or a hip injury, something that was really hampering him. And we kind of saw a little bit earlier in the 2022 cycle, and Turner took that over, and then he missed a bunch of time before he came back to the MLS. Um, with injuries, I think he missed pretty much a whole season, pretty much, and so
Yeah.
he had moments, but again, I question whether he still has the step, the speed, the shot keeping, stopping ability against that next level talent, and I think we'll probably get a look at him at some point here. Maybe he doesn't show in camp. It's hard to say. I mean, I am curious how Ponch is going to evaluate these players in the practice and what he's going to look for. I mean, um, he's got a great staff behind him that was announced today. So I think they're good evaluators, and they will put these players through the ringer to make sure that they are seeing every bit of them. So I'm interested to how that plays out. I liked Steffen when he was healthy, but I think he's definitely maybe still lost a step. I mean, people in Colorado may think differently, but he's definitely had a little bit of an up and down season with the
He
Raptors.
his numbers aren't great. Let's just put it that way. His post shot expected goals minus goals against is on the negative side, which means he isn't really helping his team by saving shots that maybe he should save, and even some that he shouldn't. He's in the 5th percentile of that, not just in MLS but in comparable leagues. 1.73 goals against per 90, save percentage just around 65%. So look, none of our goalkeepers are having stellar years outside of like Patrick Schulte, and that's because he's playing for a phenomenal team. I think he's good as well, but I think there were other stones we could have turned over that aren't Zach Steffen.
Again, I'm fine with the move. I mean, again, vet it out. Doesn't work. Thanks for coming.
Sure.
You had one more chance in camp. I again, stranger things have happened, right? And
Yeah.
so I'm trusting the process right now. I'm not going to be overly critical of it. I think he needs to evaluate these players in person, and that's what he's doing.
Yeah.
Here for sure. And again, bringing 4 keepers in, I think is a wise move.
I think it's important to note that, like Chris Brady, Slonina, even Koken, if you were healthy, they're not ready for the starting job yet. in my opinion. I know everyone is in love with Gaga Slonina, but like he's not ready. I think that's just the reality.
Right. I maybe between now and then, he gets a,
Right. They got what,
I would
15 months?
Right. I mean, it's possible, right? It's possible he comes in the 6 months leading into the World Cup, 6, 8 months leading the World Cup, and gets a move to a higher, a better division, higher. He's in the third division, right? Most of these keepers we're talking about, are in the third division. These younger ones, like they need to be playing at higher speeds, higher levels to to even be considered in my stand, from the standpoint where I'm sitting here,
Yeah.
because it's not 1990 and you're bringing Tony Meola in and saying, "Hey, it's yours." You
Right.
know what I mean? It's that's not what it is. This, you have to put that best keeper in there to give you the best chance to win. And none of these keepers, to be clear, can play with their feet. You can say, "Oh, so and so is a little bit better." They all stink. Okay,
Right.
like
Like
don't
if you're going to
sugarcoat
tell,
it.
yeah, Schulte and Stefan are considered better. They're not great.
Yeah, I mean, we're not talking gigantic leaps between them. Like, and I think the difference is that it's about the decision making in the moment. They can't be turning the ball over and then conceding a goal after the turnover, right? That's the key. Um, and so I think Pochettino is going to need to figure out how he's going to manage that, because he likes to play out of the back, uh, and so he's going to have to figure out that piece of it. Because I think that with Berhalter, you could see the players were forcing it sometimes, in general, to try to keep that. Sometimes it's okay to boot the ball up, right? Sometimes
Yeah.
you might lose possession, and you probably do, but sometimes there's a place for that. Um, and I think that's just part of experience, and that's why these keepers need to be playing, so they can
Yeah.
kind of figure that out with their clubs.
Moving on to the defenders. Marlon Fossey coming back. He's with Standard Liège. Christopher Lund from Palermo. Mark McKenzie from now Toulouse. Tim Bream with Charlotte FC. Anthony Robinson, after an injury, comes back. He's with Fulham. Miles Robinson with Cincinnati. Joe Scally with Borussia Mönchengladbach. And Austin Trusty now with Celtic. So I think we have to definitely color this discussion with the fact that we have Chris Richards, who I think you and I would both agree is the number one center back. Pick a side, he's the number one. And then you have Cameron Carter Vickers also hurt, which does, I'm not saying CCV is number two necessarily, but he's probably a top three center back, definitely a top four center back. Richards and CCV are definitely the list of guys you're calling into a camp. So that does kind of push the selection down a bit. And, we still see Tim Ream part of this selection. I don't think that's a surprise. We see Austin Trusty being brought in. He's now with Celtic. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I think he's good. I'm just not. I haven't been, high on him. But all these guys, again, have an opportunity to gain trust with the new manager and find a way to put their name in the back of his mind whenever he's thinking about center backs for the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's goalkeeper, center back are the two positions right now of real concern, and because there's no real standouts. Even Richards has been having moments where it's like, what the hell?
Yeah,
He
I mean,
wasn't
he's the number one, but that doesn't mean I'm
right.
comfortable.
Right. He was not great with, at Copa America. So I think that's something to
Yeah.
keep an eye on, right? I mean, look, he's getting better. He's playing different positions. I think, again, it's a position where a player coming in 6 months. We saw it with Ream, right, in 2022, and he damn well earned it. He came in and he had 6 to 8 months of quality soccer, and he earned his spot as a starter at the at that World Cup. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's I think it's not far fetched to say, hey, could a Walker Zimmerman, I don't kill me for this, but could a Walker Zimmerman do something similar to that? I would have said John Brooks, but he's not with a team as far as I know. And so, but again, those both players are 31 years old. That's that's not far fetched for players that have played at a high level at center back,
Right.
to maybe find a situation heading into it where they could find a spot on the roster and who knows, become a starter. I mean, I actually at this point, if Ream remains healthy, because of the likely 26, man squads they're going to put together, I can see him being on there. Like, I don't know if he plays, but I could see him being
Right.
on the squad and providing leadership, come in, hold a lead, 85th minute or whatever it is, and provide that leadership and depth, and experience. I think there's crazier things I think that have happened. So
And this is a big set for him, right? Because without Chris Richards, you do kind of feel the most trust in Tim Ream. Now, I think he is getting a little older and slower, but he's the guy you probably trust the most. The next two, in my opinion, are Miles and Mark, who both have a lot of flaws, both have some upside. So to me, that's going to be an interesting development throughout this camp, just to see who, I don't know what Poch's philosophy is on rotating players between games. I would assume the Mexico match in Mexico might be the one that's, like, for a couple reasons, the most best lineup, mainly because it'll be after a full game. You can kind of see who did well, who didn't, or you've tested some things on actual paper as opposed to, or in actual life as opposed to just on paper. Um, but yeah, I have no idea. But I'm just curious what the center back pairing and rotations will be, because again, you have two of maybe your four best not here. That's going to impact how you pick a team.
yeah, and I think combinations are going to be kind of our key, right? I mean, I think back to it. I think back to 2014. Gonzalez, Beasler, that kind of that kind of happened quickly when you think about it,
Yeah,
right? Beasler wasn't really in the mix. He came in, he had some great continuity with Omar Gonzalez, and they made it work. And so I think finding that pairing, finding the right combination back there is going to be critical to be able to anchor that defense back there, and for that group to work together, because the pairings there right now, they're up in the air, and I think I expect him to try different combinations. Again, I would be curious to know how much film he's watched on
mm,
players in general. If he's watching extra film or if he's just watching current matches, because to get up to speed with that, can be a lot of work. But I'm sure there's different outlets where he can just get highlights of each player and see what they're doing. So and then he's a smart soccer mind, so he's gonna be able to see certain things that
yeah.
um, within that.
Now we do get Jedi Robinson back. I think that is a pretty obvious plug in at left back. But I am also curious about the right back, because Joe Scally has been the established backup, but Marlon Fossey impressed last camp, in my opinion.
He really did. I've been calling for him for a while. He's performed pretty well. Honestly, I would prefer to see him starting over Scally.
Mm,
I have nothing against Scally. I think Scally you know, is in certain situations a very reliable right back. But I don't know, and I don't really know how Pochettino is going to play, with the right back. Is he going to have them hold? Is he going to have both both
right,
fullbacks push
right.
forward? I don't know how he's
Well,
going
we
to play
see on the
that.
women's side, like, you had, especially during the Olympics, you had your left-sided fullbacks who were getting up and down, and then you had Emily Fox on the right side who just kind of stayed home.
Right,
Um,
and that's yeah,
Joe
and they and
Scally's more
they
of that type of fullback.
right. And that's I think that works. I don't think you can have both push up personally. I mean Crystal Dunn in that case pushed up weight. She was way up on the wing on
Crystal
that.
Dunn's also, no offense to Jedi Robinson, Crystal Dunn's like on another level of type of player than Jedi Robinson, but they're both going to get forward.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and he's good forward. I mean, he does very well forward. So I would expect to see that. How much, we'll have to wait and see. But I do like Fossey up there. I think he earned another camp for sure, and then I think he definitely, should get a start in one of these matches, if not both. But
Yeah, and I think the other thing with Fossey is he he definitely is more like a Serginho Dest replacement, and I think that's just the question is it's good to have a Serginho Dest replacement. None of the other younger guys have really shown that they can do that. But I also think that the question then will be roster building is do you want a Serginho Dest replacement for like a full tournament roster, or do you want a Serginho Dest and then a guy who is a little more stay at home like Scally? Or do you want two right backs who get up and down the line, right? And that's gonna be again the question that you're seeing in this camp as you look forward to Nations League in the November and March, and then Gold Cup next summer because the Gold Cup will be Pochettino's real dry run of a World Cup to see, manage a true international tournament. The Nations League is not a true international tournament, the same way that a World Cup and a Gold Cup are. So I'm very just curious how that position battle plays out. I don't think there's a right answer. Maybe let me rephrase. I don't think there's a wrong answer. I think there just might be the right answer for the moment in time that we're in.
Yeah, and I think that's where this is where I think this is where we could see decision making be kind of in the U.S. men's soccer world where like, well, Des should be starting. He's better, faster, whatever, but maybe he just doesn't fit into what Pochettino
Right.
wants to do, right? That I think that's where
At
it's
this
going to
point,
come.
we can't get a damn winger to stay healthy, so just put Sergio Dest at right wing, and we'll put Fossey or someone else at right back.
Well, that's
I
the
mean,
thing.
seriously.
He's gonna. I think you're gonna see some of those sorts of things. I mean, I'm I want to be careful of certain things. I think that would be fine. I think that would work. But when
I'm
you
half joking, but like our wingers seem to be falling like
no, but I don't think that's far fetched though. I really don't. I mean, we've seen Death when he pushes forward. He's dangerous. He can cross
yeah.
the ball. He can he can get shots from 25 yards out and score on them. Right. So he can do that. And so that versatility is going to be important as well. So yeah, it all have to come together. But it's one of those things with these injured players, they can't get back and impress. A la John O'Brien back in the day. He
Yeah.
impressed enough to hold his spots, but we need these players to be healthy. I want the decisions to be hard on him, and I want the tough
Right.
decisions to be out there because I want the best squad that's going to have the best chance to run deep. Not necessarily the best players per se, but maybe I'm sure there's a combination of that.
Well, let's move up to the midfielders. 7 of those guys: Brendan Aronson from Leeds United, Gianluca Busio back in camp. He is with Venezia. Johnny Cardoso was called in. He was replaced by Tanner Tessman, who's now with Lyon. Weston McKennie from Juventus, Aidan Morris from Middlesbrough, Yunus Musa from AC Milan, and Malik Tillman from PSV Eindhoven. So I think the big thing here is Cardoso, who we all agreed looked bad last camp, gets an injury, doesn't come into this camp. A good chance to stake his claim again, make his name known in front of the new coach. Tanner Tessman gets the opportunity. Now, Tessman is probably a little bit more of a, I don't know, I don't want to call him a ball winning destroyer type midfielder, but he is a little bit more of that type of midfielder than I think Cardoso is. Um, I think this is going to be tough for Pochettino to not be able to really evaluate Cardoso in his system. But Tessman and Morris are a little not. I don't know. I like Tessman a lot. I think Tessman could become a really good player for us. His move to Lyon, I think, will help him in the long run. Um, I'm just not super moved by having Tessman and Morris as our midfield option, our center midfield options for this camp.
Yeah, I like what Tessman provides. I think he reminds me a lot of James Sands. I think he's a
Okay.
better. I think he's a better.
More athletic James Sands would be a good
Yeah,
call for that. Yeah.
but he with James Sands he lacked the speed, and I think for that destroyer six position holding midfielder position, he may not be fast enough to be able to do what he needs to do. And
Yeah.
I had suggested in my lineup that maybe he could be potentially looked at as a center back.
A lot of people have
Eh,
talked about that.
yeah,
Yeah. A little bit better on the ball. Definitely. Some passing range. Dude can hit a free kick. That's something we know.
right.
Um,
Yeah.
And honestly, I mean, with Gio Reyna out, um, that's the other, kind of bummer here. Um, you could try maybe putting the Tessman Busio midfield back together from Venezia and see if that works for the window.
Yeah, we saw that we saw it at the Olympics, I believe, right?
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
we did.
yeah.
They didn't have Weston McKennie in front of them, so that would probably
No,
make a big difference.
but again, there is some continuity. Obviously, they've played a couple of seasons together, and there is some continuity there, which is important. I mean,
Yeah,
definitely, um, at the club level. But yeah, I feel your concern. I agree with your concern there. I would probably expect maybe Musa plays that 6,
yeah,
or is it double pivot type of thing with McKennie and Musa. Maybe I don't know.
yeah. That's the other thing is all these theoretical questions pop up again. Is well, can you play double pivot with McKennie and Musa? Can you play a single pivot and have two guys in front of them? Those pop up again because you just don't know what Pochettino is going to do because in his what I think is a good thing, he's not tied to any one sort of either formation or philosophical ideal, right? Other than play good soccer, score goals, win. Um, and I am curious just how those things are going to start playing out again.
Yeah, it's the first roster release, the first lineup. All these things are like, I mean, it's they're all new and fresh. They're exciting to kind of see what it is, and we theorize all the time about these sorts of things, and they're guesses. I mean, I've been guessing U.S. lineups forever, and I don't never I get close, but I never hit it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so like I can't read what Berhalter's thinking, and sometimes he makes 2 changes, and sometimes he makes 8 changes, right? And so that's, um, that's where that so-called guessing game of what the lineup's going to look like against which opponent based on what we think. And a lot of times it's a combination of what I would like to see and a combination of what I think Berhalter will do, and so it's out or
Yeah.
or whatever the manager is going to do. And so that right now we don't know. We have no sample of what that is. I mean, I don't think we're going to see any huge surprises.
Again,
Like
the player pool is the player pool, right?
right.
But these are the places where those little wrinkles might
Right.
occur.
Right. If he starts putting players in completely different positions from what they have played before and what they're playing with their club, then if he throws Tanner Tessman at center back, okay, that's different, right? That's a little bit of a surprise.
Yeah.
It'll be
But
unexpected.
Testament and Busio at midfield is like, well, okay, yeah,
Yeah,
that kind of makes sense.
yeah.
Or
It's
even
kind of
Musa and Busio in the double pivot, or whatever it ends up being. None of the combinations of the midfielders that we have right now would shock me. But I think the problem is that a real test of what we will see from Pochettino, given the injuries to both Adams and Cardoso at the 6, and then also without Gio Reyna in the more advanced position. So
yeah,
that's my unsureness.
yeah. And I think that's where like I wonder does a manager try to force their system, their
Yeah.
style, and say you're going here and you're gonna play like this, or they say, geez, you know what, I'm missing some players here. Maybe I need to alter my
Well,
formation
and
or alter my
that's a
style.
great question of what this particular first camp is for Pochettino. I think he touched a little bit in his press conference, but the ideas, the philosophies, the general concepts and patterns probably will need to be installed. But how much of that, how much of the, I don't know if this is for sure, but like, if you have a 360-page textbook, right? Do you get the abridged version or do you get chapter 1? Which one is it? And so that's what I'm curious about what's going to happen from, now that they're in camp. We're recording on Monday. This training camp leading up to Saturday's game, basically a 5 days. How much of it is, are we installing by bits or are we installing concepts and building on them?
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting how it plays out in general because um I mean, yeah, I mean, you are missing significant players at certain positions, and honestly, we may not have the full complement until June of next year.
I mean,
That
Thomas, when are we ever going to have Gio Reyna healthy?
I mean, his stuff's like nagging. It's a little here. I mean, the thing is, he's got to figure out his own situation, get new trainers, something, because
Something.
yeah, because to me, it's like either he's not doing the things he needs to do to properly recover, or he's just truly just, glass, right? And so, and that, I think that's the concerning part, because that reliability, is huge, right? That
Yeah.
consistency to be playing, to be quality year after year after year. We don't see it along with the U.S. And then we sit here saying, well, we need this player, or we're not going to be able to do what we need to do. That's a problem, because we don't have the depth of a Brazil or France or Germany to say, okay,
Yeah.
well, we can bring this player in. So that's the thing. We have to have, our full, 40 some odd players healthy, and let the tough decisions come. I don't want it to say, well, next person up type of situation. I do want to have our best, group of players there. And Reyna does fall into that,
Yeah.
but at this point, he's just not able to remain healthy. And again, he hasn't played much this season either. So that's the other thing. I mean, which is crazy, because how the hell is he getting injured?
Well, it sucks for Gio, but the guy who could benefit the most, and we haven't seen it from the men's national team yet, but he is having a great start to the Eredivisie, and that is Malik Tillman, who 4 goals and assists in 8 matches, right? Playing very well, very highly rated. He's playing a little bit more on the left side of the field than like truly centrally, but that's fine, whatever. Um, that is a dude who we need to start seeing that type of performance at the men's national team level, because he's playing in a decent league. Eredivisie is probably, a top 7 league in Europe. Yeah, I don't know how you truly want to evaluate, but it's, not, it's behind France, but not far. Um, he is a guy who is continually putting in good performances and putting up good stats. Got to take that club performance, put it into the national team, and hopefully we see something out of him that can convince us, not necessarily the coach, but convince us that he can either be the Gio Reyna replacement or something, because we need to figure out how he fits in with this national team, because he seems to be too good of a player to not have a bigger role with the national team.
Yeah, I mean, I, I think I like him better on the wing personally. The middle, he just doesn't seem to,
Yeah.
the connection didn't work. I mean, again, maybe Pochettino's going to have some better philosophies that'll bring that together. But I think for some reason, I think he's better wide, and then to come into because it seems like he's just too
Yeah.
out of sorts at times.
Well, speaking of wingers, let's move to the forward position and talk about how Tillman might fit into that. 6 forwards called up. Brandon Vasquez was called up this past week uh, to replace Valerian Balogun on the roster. Ricardo Pepi, who is Tillman's teammate at Eindhoven, gets called up. Christian Pulisic, the best player in Serie A history with AC Milan. Josh Sargent with Norwich. Tim Weah was called up. He gets hurt, or couldn't recover some form of that. So he is replaced by Alex Zendejas on the roster, and then Haji Wright from Coventry City. So Vasquez and Zendejas, this is a cool little narrative building. Both Mexican American dual nationals chose to play for the U.S. Both now play in Mexico. Vasquez for Monterrey, Zendejas for Club America. Will be playing in Estadio Akron, which is in Guadalajara, which specifically for like Club America is a big rivals stadium, I guess, for Monterrey as well. I mean, they're all high up there. That is an interesting now, thread woven into the tapestry of the USA Mexico rivalry.
Yeah, it's an interest. When I saw that, I'm like, okay, is it a logistical thing? Type.
I
To
get
me,
Vasquez being called up a little bit. He's, if you don't have Balogun, he's
well, right. I mean, DK's not hasn't been back long enough.
right.
PFOC maybe be the other option. So you could do that. I don't hate the call up for sure. I think it's and for me the Zendejas, I kind of wanted to see him get another call in. I felt
Mm.
in 23 at the Gold Cup, things didn't, line up. Maybe in this, with the core group, maybe he's less, focused on in terms of the, primary player, and maybe he gets more opportunities to, to go to goal. But yeah, it's a good group. We have to, again, it goes back to just seeing these group players again. And I think I'm excited to see a couple of these players that we haven't seen in a little bit.
We didn't have Whale last camp. And so I think that is underscoring the fact we don't have winger depth. And this is the conversation I want to continue from Malik Tillman is I know Haji Wright, Berhalter said they see him as a winger. He's currently playing on the wing. But, Christian Pulisic has been playing mostly right side for Milan. He's played, a little bit on the left too, but he kind of has been more of a right-sided player for Milan. And I'm wondering, is this Tillman or Wright who slot in at that left winger position, and maybe you finally do see Pulisic come out on the right side? These are, again, questions that with the new coach, we don't know. For Berhalter, he was always going to play Christian Pulisic on the left side. That was what he was going to do. So again, I don't know, and I don't even know if that means anything about Pochettino's style, other than he's a little less rigid than other coaches.
Yeah, I mean, again, this all goes back to putting players in positions to succeed and that they're comfortable in, right? So there's always been this debate. Well, he's a great player. He should be able to play anywhere. And so I'm on the fence with some of those things. Like I'm like, well, if he should play here, he can play there. Every position has the rules, not the rules, but just has an expectation of what comes out of that position. And so if you're not playing that week in, week out with your club and you're asked to do it internationally, I mean, there are players that can do that, but there are others that just can't and they don't perform well. And so that's the key, right? So finding whether it is, I mean, right wing, left wing, I think, a good player, a great player like Pulisic can do well on either side. Maybe he's better on one or the other, but he can accommodate that. But if you ask him to play somewhere else, maybe he doesn't perform at that high level.
The reason I say I think I want to see it on him start on the right side is because without Tim Weah, we don't have great right wingers. We just don't. And I would rather see Pulisic moved right into something that he clearly is thriving. That's the position he's thriving in at Milan, right? He is doing very well with AC Milan playing on that right side. Why not move him to the right and see either Tillman or Wright on the left side? See what happens. Because I think Wright has established that he's not truly a striker. He can play it, but he's not truly a striker. We also have 3 other strikers here that can fill in, and we'll talk about them next. But I just think now is the best time to move Pulisic to the right wing because while Zendejas may be doing good things in Liga MX, he's not, as he's kind of proven, not truly up for the international level at the right wing position. So for me personally, I want to see Pulisic move to the right side, try Tillman or Wright out on the left. Now, that said, the real question is without Balogun, who in his defense had truly staked a claim. I think the Copa America run was him saying, I am the starting striker. He's out. Pepe, Sargent, Vasquez all have a chance to take a big step forward in being either the top dog or the second dog in that striker depth chart.
Keep saying it. It's health. Sargent, stay healthy. Damn it, man. Stay healthy because this guy gets on a roll and he does well, right? And then he comes into camp and then he gets a, sprained ankle, just something. Like, I want to see Sargent. I want to see him start. I want to see him play. Because I think we know what Pepe can do. I think the great thing about Pepe is he's a little bit different of a striker in terms of what he can do. And, we've seen him come off the bench and score a lot of goals. And so I hate to pigeonhole him to that right now, but right now that may be his best role. I mean, I hope he gets a start. I hope he gets his chance in this window as well, because I think he's definitely earned that because he's doing well with his club and he's done well with the national team. But selfishly, I've been a Sargent fan
Yeah.
since he came in, right? And
I've been
since
a
he
Sargent
played
fan
as a
since he
team,
was 7 and the U17 World Cup scoring goals, and then at
right?
the U20 World Cup scoring goals in the same damn year, playing up a level. I'm with you. Uh, I also think there needs to be something to be said about on the international level having a dude who is a true super sub like Pepe has been for the U.S. men's national team. Now, that said, Balogun's out, so why not try him as the starting striker? But I think right now, Sargent, if he can stay healthy throughout the entire camp, has a massive opportunity to prove to not just the fans, but the new coach that he can be, if not number 2, possibly number 1. I mean, he's got 4 goals, I think 5, 6 goal contributions total. Maybe 7 goal contributions. Yeah, 7 goal contributions in 9 matches, more than any striker we have in the pool right now. Right, that's important as well. He's getting a job done at the club level, um, more than other guys. Right, Pepe's had a decent start, 3 goals in 7 matches. Vasquez has cooled off from when he got on the scene at Monterrey, but uh, Sargent, this is your time, bud. This is your time. You have to go prove it because, again, new coach, you've got to show him that when you're healthy, you can score because with your injury history, man, we can't guarantee you're going to be healthy.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, and don't forget, this striker pool is relatively young. I mean, these players are,
Right.
are going to be here and then, at the next World Cup, right? Like, or have an opportunity to be in the next World Cup. They're in their, early to mid 20s. They're in their primes right now. So, and part of the reason I love Sargent is in terms of what he can do, you know, in those big moments, and we're seeing it right now with Norwich, and that's, to me, that's a huge. Uh, a huge thing that, again, I wanted to translate to the national team. Just like we want to see Tillman do stuff with the national team, we want to see Sargent do that now and carry that through. And again, have those tough decisions because you've got such a quality group of players that can go out and you can feel comfortable putting any of the players in that position, and you know that success will follow.
Well, I think, again, all 3 of these guys have a chance to prove something um, with the lack of Balogun. But, I personally would love to see, and I don't know if he starts or comes off the bench, but I would love to see Brandon Vasquez, the Mexican American, play against Mexico and score against Mexico down in Mexico. And I just think that would, like, as a nation, we need that. And I think that's just really important.
Yeah, the amount of goals scored in Mexico is can probably be counted on
Well,
one
now
hand.
let's think about this. Okay, we have had really good success there um, with qualifying, right? I believe the last time we played a friendly down there, we beat them.
Yeah, that was what, 2012. I mean,
That
bring
was
up
that was their like gold medal celebration. Yeah.
yeah,
So
that was
just saying.
who scored that goal? That was that Michael.
Oh, it wasn't it
Such
wasn't Jesus Verona, I don't think, but Delgado. It was someone like that. Someone who didn't do anything with the national team after that because it was a Jurgen Klinsmann roster, and he didn't believe in continuity of anything.
Oh, Bradley scored in that qualifier. Oh, it was Davies. It looked like it was Davies that scored
Down
that
in 2012 for the friendly. Wow. Okay.
No, 2012. Why is that on here? On here. Did I miss something? I might have had another filter on this.
Well,
Bring it back up.
regardless, I would love to see Vasquez score against Mexico in Mexico. I think that would be awesome. Let's wrap up the roster conversation with coaching roster updates. How about that? Pochettino and U.S. Soccer announced his kind of full staff ahead of the camp. Most of these guys have been with Pochettino before. So we have Jesus Perez, who is the, as they put it, quote, first assistant coach. Miguel Mickey D'Agostino is the assistant coach. Antonio Tony Jimenez is the goalkeepers coach. Sebastian Pochettino, yes, that's his son, is a sports scientist. He's been with him since 2016. And then Silvia Tuya Vinyasis is the strength and conditioning coach. So that kind of rounds up the men's first team technical staff. I don't have anything to say, just reporting the news. Now let's move on to the fun part of the conversation. Did you have any snubs from this roster?
Snubs. Let me look real quick at my notes because it's kind of
Especially
it's
with now with the
challenge.
injuries that then get called up, like that kind of took care of at least one of my snubs.
Well, that's the thing. Like, you know, Maloney may be the only one because you look at like you're replacing, you know, Johnny Cardosa, and it's a snub probably on the second look, not the initial one, right?
Right, right.
Would you?
Yeah, I
Would you?
think the initial roster, again, with all the injuries you had to pull from, I don't think there was really a snub from the initial roster. And then you add
Yeah,
in the guys who got called in because of injury, and I feel like that took care of at least again, it took care of at least one of my snubs, but snub is a hard
right.
word to use for some of these.
Yeah, Leonard Manoli is probably the one that just jumps out to me on the
Yeah.
second pass. Like you could have taken him over, Testament. I think.
Yeah,
Again, I'm not mad at with the decision. I just think that's another consideration on that. Other than that, I mean, you could. I mean, I don't know. Brian Reynolds really, he's kind of
mm,
evened out a little bit. He's maybe just another name for the right back position that maybe considered at some point, but he's
totally.
I don't know, he's kind of faded away a little bit, I think.
Mine, honestly, is the only one I can think of when I was going through is I just kind of want to see him as Paxton Aronson, but I don't want to see him more than anyone who's here. I just am like, well, why not have 28 guys and call in a couple new guys? That's really the only stance because I think the 23 were pretty set, and then he had 25 to start with. And I thought the ones that he called an extra, I mean, look, Stefan, I could have dealt without. Like, I would have preferred to see maybe a Matt Freeze. But that's, I'm not getting torn up about another MLS goalkeeper and which one that is. I think the three I'm interested in seeing are Turner, Horvath, and Schulte and just see how they play out on the depth chart.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a whole lot of snubs on this roster, to be quite truthful. I mean, it just, and even if they were, they're somehow injured.
Yeah, and I think where I want to maybe start seeing a little bit of a trend is maybe calling in some of these like a Paxton Harrison, maybe some of these, but there is a U20 camp going on right now, I believe too. So some of these players like
Yeah,
Benjamin
we got
Kamaski
we
was
got
called
that
in.
U17 World Cup happening as well. So there may be some legitimate like resources. The women's U17 World Cup is about to start too. So like that just might be some legitimate resources that U.S. Soccer is like, well, maybe we don't need to have all these guys coming in and let's just focus and keep it simple.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I think they'll
possible.
get their chances. I mean, in general, and hopefully we have more health next window because the next November window is a competitive window for Nations League. So
Yeah.
um, there is stuff on the line there.
Look, we got two matches against Panama and Mexico. One against Panama is Saturday, October 12th in Austin, Texas. You can listen to Thomas and I, as well as our friend Lawrence Dockery, kind of gripe about the U.S. men's national team playing in not only Texas for the fifth time this year, but Austin for like the fifth time since the stadium opened. And by the way, U.S. teams are playing in Austin twice this month because the women are playing there later. And then they play in Guadalajara, Stadio Akron in Mexico on Tuesday, the 15th at 10:30 Eastern. Fantastic start time. But these are two. Look, the Panama match at home. We have talked about this almost ad nauseum. Like the match availability is what it is right now. Um, these September and October windows were gonna be tough to get truly competitive matches, but Panama at home. Look, they essentially knocked us out of the Gold Cup by beating us. Thanks to Tim Weah's red card. And Mexico's always a battle. And the fact that you are challenging yourself by going on the road to play Mexico is important.
Yeah, that's a smart move by the federation on that. You have to create that different atmosphere, create that level of tension, travel, whatever it is, right? Because we don't, it's not happening at home. So if you can get those, Mexico matches, that I think it actually means a little bit more than just playing another friendly against Mexico and the United States, right? We don't play many matches other than qualifying down in Mexico, so I think it's
Yeah.
and again, Pochettino gets the benefit of this, right? Again, his mentality, his belief is, these are all matches, right? They're not friendlies; these are matches, right? So that mentality going into it, let's see how it plays out, right? Because
I just love that mentality shift.
yeah, because it's huge. I mean, because the mentality is like, oh, get a tie in the road, we're fine. It's like, go out there, put your best effort out there, and win these matches. We're not just walking through this here, but we're trying to prepare the team. And so the hope is, as qualifying continues moving forward, and either teams get eliminated or qualify, we are going to see better matches.
Yeah.
And better teams available. There is rumors that the U.S. is looking to schedule some pretty tough competition headed into the World Cup. I think England is on that.
Yeah.
Depending on, obviously draws and all those other things could impact. I don't expect to be in a group with England based
No.
on the number of
Well, and,
teams.
and I think that is just to point that out real quick is the benefit of hosting the World Cup, right? Is these teams are going to want to come play in the country that's hosting the World Cup ahead of the World Cup. So hopefully going into that, you'll be able to get teams like England or other big name teams. I mean, shoot, we might see Argentina and Brazil come up again, because they want to test out the waters. So that is important. But you know, I think for me, it's awesome after a whole year, right, of playing. While we did play continental championships, right, we played in a Nations League and a Gold Cup. We have not been outside of the U.S. this year, and we haven't been outside the U.S. since the World Cup in 2022, if my memory serves correctly.
We had I think that one Nations League last year.
Oh,
I
that's
mean,
right. We had the
yeah,
Nations League to get to that. You're correct.
yeah.
Thank you. The one so we played once outside of the U.S., and that was against Trinidad and Tobago, and we lost. So the fact that we're going to end this year in October, have a game on the road, and November have a game on the road is important. And I think as you look forward to even next year, obviously Nations League will be at home, Gold Cup always in the U.S. What those fall friendlies look like, we don't know. What qualifying will, truly will wrap up for other confederations. So you do need to have some adverse conditions, because just because you're hosting a World Cup doesn't mean you're not going to face adversity.
Well, and that's the thing. You've got to test yourself with that. And I think when you look at the '94 World Cup, I mean, very different times. Very, not no domestic league. Most of these players not with it. Over in Europe, they really found every opportunity to play the best possible opponents. They played some club teams over in Europe. They played, very good teams. I think Mexico is playing a club team this window too. I believe. I think I saw that somewhere, maybe I'm misremembering that. But again, you have to try to figure out how you're going to schedule
Yeah.
these challenging pieces in place to do that. And I guess the advantage here is it's not Berhalter, it's Pochettino, so he can try different things. So it's not like, oh, we're wasting the window type of thing.
Yeah.
Same old, right? We're going through the motion. So I think honestly, I think that timing is
Yeah.
good, right? Because then he's gonna try different things, and you're gonna make it more meaningful for the players.
Well, and by the end of this window, we'll know where we're playing in um, November, because the Nations League will have the group stage will have wrapped up, and we'll know by then what the draw looks like and where we're playing, and obviously who we're hosting. But that's good. Two questions before we get out of here, and the first one is a little more thought provoking, if you will. We both mentioned that this roster it was pretty much the same as last month. The injuries happened, but this roster is not new. Let's just put it that way, right? This is again, if you thought that Pochettino was going to come in like a whole brand new slate of characters were going to show up, that was not going to happen. The cast looks the same from the last movie. So how do we improve? What are some things that you personally are looking at um, from Pochettino and this team to say, okay, he has influenced them in some way within the first window?
I mean, I want to be, I want to hoping they're less rigid with like, the tactics behind it, right? I think you want to have these players be creative on their own, figuring out to
Hmm.
do, again, allow them to be creative in moments and not so much, horseshoe, passing with Berhalter ball, right? Like to me, that was one was predictable, and two, it was boring. And so, I mean, and I don't really care about the boring so much. I want to be very careful. I do not care how they win, but I want them to win, right? So at this point, I don't care, but I do want them to have some creativity of their own.
Yeah.
There's some talented players out here that can do creative things and catch teams off guard. And I think if you allow them to do that, you're going to see more opportunities for goals to be scored against better teams in
Mm.
bigger moments.
That's actually a good point of just it's a little bit eyeball test, but like we'll be able to see how creative they can be and if it feels like everything is scripted because it did feel like, things were pretty prescribed uh in the last regime. My two that I want to see specifically is one, our strikers have to get more touches. I'd love for those touches to be inside the box, but they have to have more touches. That was a bane of the Berhalter reign where it seemed like our strikers were not really involved, be it link up play, be it in the box, a lot of things. And the other one is, to your point, fewer passes among the center backs. Like, good Lord, I don't need the center backs to just pass to each other and the fullbacks and go, like, to your point, that horseshoe. Because the problem is we got so much horseshoed in our own half, right? If we're going to horseshoe, at least do it in front of their box and just be patient. But we horseshoed so much right in front of our damn box. Fewer passes between the center backs. I need that passing map to just not be a solid, 10-point red line between the two center backs.
Yeah, and I will add like the counterattacks. Like, and that's someone mentioned this. I think it was one of the old veterans. A little bit more old school U.S. soccer, right? Like how they used to play it, like grind certain things out. Find the right counter in the right moment and get those goals in those moments. Because and under Berhalter, there wasn't a huge amount of counters. Like they didn't have that sort of uh it just wasn't his system. And I think we really
Mm-hmm.
missed out sometimes with being able to do that and catching defenses off guard and being able to counter because our midfielders, that's the thing. I don't know how it's going to work on the Pochettino, but our midfielders weren't contributing against with goals. Everything was coming from the wings. And to your point, the strikers are not getting the balls enough where they need to in dangerous positions. And
Yeah.
so it just they weren't linking up correctly. And to me, you literally lost a player on the field because of how that was being
Yeah.
played.
Yeah, I mean, I think during the Gold Cup we saw Balogun put a couple balls in, the back of the net, and it felt like okay, this could be something we could build on, and then obviously that didn't happen because we crashed out, and we played poorly otherwise. But yeah, I think though I think being more creative will get the striker involved, right? And I think being less rigid will remove all that passing between the center backs because they'll feel free or to maybe just knock a ball long. Who knows? Next question is pretty simple. Do we have to win both of these friendlies? Is that winning the most important thing? Because I think Pochettino would say yes, but we are in phase not even one. Like this is the first time we're seeing him. How important is it to win, and do we have to win?
Do we have to win? No, but I think it is important that they do win. So that's kind of like two-sided piece of it because I think you've got to kind of want to get off on the right foot. Because I mean, I have to go back and look. I know Klinsmann didn't start out great. I think he had a Mexico match right out of the books. That wasn't a great result. The
Yeah,
team didn't look good. I think if you lose and look good, then you're okay with it. If you lose and you look disjointed and don't, and I think that's kind of the key, right? I mean, you're it's an eyeball test. Again, we're not
right.
playing against top tier talents, so I think the skill level needs to be there, and they've got to figure it out. Again, that comes with how simplistic or how rigid the system is going to be for the players, right? So this is where the concern is until we start seeing it with a coach that doesn't have international experience, understanding that you have limited time with the players to put something in place and then for it to translate to the matches.
Right. I think that's important. What you said about we don't have to win because, like, obviously you could also tie and it feel okay, but winning does help make the rights feel really good, right? The right things you're supposed to do on the field that he tells you to, and all those things. If you do them and you get immediate positive feedback, feels good, right? Um, I will say though, I think you can't lose to Mexico. And the reason I say that is because we have gone so long without losing to them. Um, I mean, basically, since 2020, we haven't lost to them, right? Like we had that bad year in 2019 when Berhalter took over because we lost to him in the Gold Cup final and then lost to them badly at home. But I guess since 2021, we didn't play them in 2020, but you know what I mean. I think not losing to Mexico is a good way to continue to say, oh, so beat us with a new manager type of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because we haven't lost in Mexico since 2009, I think, right?
Yeah.
And so, and there's four matches obviously that they've played since 2009 that they've won one and drawn on three others, right? So to your point, you're right. Like you've got to go to Mexico and get a result, and I think because we've had that, we have better players, in place right now, and we've got to continue that run to essentially continue holding the torch of best in CONCACAF because
Right.
we haven't seen that since the qualifier, and I think that will be, a good test for this group too, right? Amp up. It's gonna, it's not an Azteca, but it's still in Mexico, right? So it's definitely a result is needed. I don't disagree with that.
Anyway, we got 2 games to talk about coming up there with the brand new coach. We will talk about them next week after those matches happen. So, Thomas, thank you for joining me tonight to talk about the U.S. men's national team and Pochettino's first roster in charge of the program.
Yeah, great. I love talking rosters. I love, just speculating and seeing what it's going to be, especially with a new coach. There's definitely a lot more question marks on the table here. So it'll be interesting to see how they line up against Panama. 2 later starts, so at least one Saturday night, so we can
Yeah.
maybe get a nap in or whatever.
Yeah, that 10:30 Tuesday night starts tough. I mean,
Yeah,
happy the West Coast can watch it, I guess, at 7:30, but still, it's going to be tough. Thank you, everyone, for listening. I'm Bart. I'm out.